The fog isn't coming from the river, it's coming from the ship. Not steam, not smoke. A colour green-grey, like the air has been bruised. You're on a deck and the metal under your boots is vibrating in a way you can feel in your teeth. The sound isn't loud, it's everywhere. A low frequency hum that doesn't travel through time, that doesn't travel through air, it travels through bones. Words come out wrong, stretched, swallowed, like the ship is already somewhere else and sound is trying to catch up. Then the hull lights up, not like a spotlight, like the ship is being outlined from the inside. A glow crawls along rivets, rails, the edges of the superstructure, tracing every sharp angle like it's been selected. You grab the railing and it's warm. Someone yells to cut the power. Too late. The fog thickens until the bow is gone, then the midsection, then the stern. And for a moment the destroyer escort is reduced to a shape made of light and haze, a warship rendered into a ghost. And then it happens. The ship doesn't sail away, it unhooks. One moment it's occupying space, the next moment it isn't. Not invisible, absent. A gap in the world where something heavy should be. The men left behind stare at nothing, waiting for the ocean to correct itself, and then the air snaps. A pressure change, a crackle. The ship returns, not smoothly, not gently, but like a file being dragged back into the wrong folder. Metal shrieks, men fall, and when the fog clears enough to see the deck again, you realise the deck has changed. Not the paint, not the layout, the crew. Some are on their knees vomiting like their bodies can't agree where they are. Some are screaming with no sound coming out, and some aren't moving at all because parts of them are no longer fully separate from the ship. A hand fused into a bulkhead, a leg swallowed by steel, a face pressed into the railing like the ship decided people were optional components. And you understand the real horror. The problem wasn't that the ship disappeared, the problem was that when it came back, not everything made it back properly.
This again. Reintegration failure. This is why we don't visit.
Fair point, 85. Hold up anyway. I've dropped you straight in to the nightmare. To understand why this story refuses to die, we need to rewind a little. The legend calls it the Philadelphia Experiment, a secret 1943 Navy project where a ship, usually the USS Eldridge, was allegedly wrapped in a powerful field and made to disappear. Some versions say invisible, others say teleported, appearing briefly in Norfolk before returning. And the story always comes with the same aftertaste: a greenish fog, crew sickness, men embedded in metal, missing sailors, memory damage, and a clean official silence. But here's the thing: the how is always dressed up as genius level physics, Einstein unified field theory, bending light, warping space, because it makes the story feel inevitable, like it was real science that simply went too far. But the more you look at what the Navy was actually doing in World War II, the more the story mutates. Because there was a very common procedure happening on ships at the time, real confirmed degaussing, not invisibility, not teleportation, a way to reduce the ship's magnetic signature so magnetic mines don't detect it. Coils, currents, controlled fields, boring on paper until you imagine standing inside that hum with your teeth buzzing.
When will humans ever learn you haven't mastered gravity yet? Volts was ambitious.
That's true, and that's where the Philadelphia experiments get dangerous, because it doesn't need to be true to feel like it could be. Here's what most people miss. The Philadelphia experiment doesn't rise out of 1943 first. It rises out of letters in the mid-1950s. A man named Carl Allen, also known as Carlos Allende, claims he witnessed something at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. He warns UFO author Maurice K. Jessup to stop digging. Jessup gets pulled into a bizarre paper trail, a noted book's Navy interest, which later becomes part of the myth's proof, and the US Navy ends up having to address it publicly. The Office of Naval Research states it never investigated invisibility in 1943 and points out ONR didn't even exist until 1946, but that denial doesn't kill the story. Now we get to the uncomfortable part. Not debunking, not mocking, just looking at the seams. The ship, most often named USS Eldridge, was commissioned in late August 1943. Records place it away from Philadelphia during the famous late October date. That should end it, but it doesn't, because legends don't run on calendars, they run on sensations, and the sensation at the core of Philadelphia is horrifyingly consistent. You wrapped a living ship in a field it wasn't built to handle, and reality slipped. And here's where the Corby 85 angle bites, because fused to the hull isn't just gore, it's a metaphor. It takes sailors, anonymous men in a war, and turns them into a warning. Don't let machine decide what counts as human. That's psychological horror, not sci-fi spectacle. This is where we slow it down, because if you stop at teleporting warships and men embedded in steel, it sounds like pure fiction. So let's separate what we can ground from what's been claimed. First, the good news. There's no verified evidence that a Navy ship was made invisible or teleported in 1943. No confirmed documentation of a project, and the Navy's own historical material rejects the story as impossible. Now the bad news. Wartime naval secrecy was real. Degaussing was real. And it involved running serious electrical current through coils inside a steel hull.
Millions on a ship, then you electrocute it whilst it's floating in water. Humans are wild.
Yeah, when you put it like that, 85. So here's the question that keeps the story alive. What if the Philadelphia experiment isn't a record of teleportation, but a record of how it felt when men were exposed to something they couldn't explain inside a system that refused to explain itself? Because that's how myths form, not from facts, from fear and silence. There's one part of the Philadelphia story I can't shake. It's not Einstein, it's not the green fog, it's the idea of returning wrong. Like reality can misfire you, like a ship can come back, but the people inside it come back as partial permissions. And that's the kind of horror you don't need to prove to feel. Because even if the Philadelphia experiment never happened the way the legend says, we're still left with a darker possibility that something did happen, something smaller, messier, and more human, and the story that grew around it became a mask, not to hide teleportation, to hide damage. And once a story like that exists, it doesn't stay in 1943, it migrates, it shows up again in other places, other bunkers, other rumours, projects where the mind, the body and the machine are treated like parts you can swap. And if you've been watching this series, you already know what I'm about to say. Maybe Philadelphia wasn't the beginning, maybe it was an early echo, a warning shot, a moment where someone realised you can push a system past the point where it can safely put people back together. And if that's true, then the real question isn't did the ship vanish, it's what else have we done that we only describe as a story, because admitting the real version would be worse. Some experiments don't leave proof, they leave legends, and legends are what people cling on to when official records give them nothing else. Stay curious, my friends. Shane out.